Welcome to Season 2, Episode 7 of the Free Spirit Academy podcast with writer and plant-based recipe creator Ash Foster. Free Spirit Academy is about you being fully you. My name is Randy Moss, and I'm an eating psychology coach and Kundalini yoga teacher, bringing you conversations about freedom. Largely from rigid diets and painful body image, but ultimately it's about the freedom to be yourself. This is about honoring our own bodies and our purest self-expression. Welcome to the podcast. Words, wow, I love that, like 10 times throughout this episode, so I annoyed the heck out of myself listening back to this, but hopefully that means that Ash said so many fabulous, wise things that you really have a lot of reasons to look forward to this episode. Before we dive in, I want to ask that if you've been enjoying this podcast, I would really appreciate you leaving a review on iTunes. I'd like to continue growing this little podcast baby, and I'd really appreciate your support. And I will warn you that I talk a lot in the beginning because I have a lot to say bringing Ash in. The two of us have been connected in the online world of detox and health for a lot of years, and she taught me a lot along the way. So today we will talk about how we can try and get a sense of adventure and freedom and excitement through following a particular diet, how perfectionism can be addicting. Ash addressed how she dealt with extreme depression after the birth of her first child, how to handle being made fun of by family for food choices, how she balances firmness and flexibility as she feeds her family a whole foods, plant-based diet, and following freedom and joy in food choices and in all choices as much as we're capable. I hope you enjoy this episode with Ash Foster. Years ago, you and I were in the same sort of online detox support community space. And honestly, maybe this is a stretch. I don't know. I feel like there was nobody in there not struggling with some sort of disordered relationship with food in their body. We were all really well-intentioned, but a little bit nuts. And there were all of these freaked out posts like, oh my God, I didn't combine my food properly. How do I fix this? Or like, okay, I'm overeating and I'm so disappointed and now I'm just going to juice fast for 5 days. Like all of this sort of stuff. And you pop in there one day with this amazing post that I never forgot. And I loved it so much that I actually asked you at one point if I could share it on my own website. And you had titled it CTFO, a phrase, I believe it was from your yoga teacher when she wanted you all to chill the F out. And I pulled a snippet of it that I'm going to read. It's more than a snippet. It's a little long, but it's great. So you said, I've read so much lately that's like, guys, I ate the ice cream, don't hate me. Or, hey, I managed to go all day without food on just green juice. And please don't get me wrong, I've written stuff like that too. But for some reason though, today I'm just realizing that it can be so draining. That level of critical perfectionism lurking in those words is not life-giving. When do we as women get so scared of messing up that we forget to live life boldly? When do we get so focused on the fact that we only ate cherry tomatoes for dinner or that we forget to do the crazy naked dance in front of the mirror? Why do we obsess and cringe and fret and even celebrate over the pettiest things? I think that's what I'm reacting to, you guys. When did our fear become so big and our victories become so small? It breaks my heart. And then in the end, you tie it up with, let's offer each other freedom. I'd like to see some posts about how you pretended to smack that naked in front of the mirror the other day. Oh, wait, that was me. I'd like to see some posts about what you really want. The big things, the deep things. I'd like to see some posts with boldness. Tell me the boldest thing that you've done lately, please. I want to know. Let's all be bigger for a while. So this perspective just hit me really hard. Not that, and I know I'm talking so much before I even invite you into the conversation. Thank you for waiting so patiently while I read a thing that you wrote, which probably feels so awkward, but it was so good. And even though I went on to struggle for a lot more years after I read this, it was a seed of sanity that was planted in me. So how did you find this perspective amongst all of our obsession and perfectionist freakouts?
Wow. I'm not sure exactly where that came from, but I guess it's something that probably all of us have in us, which is just a desire for greatness and for adventure and for our lives to be about really big things. And I think all of us know intuitively when the most exciting thing to us in a day is like, oh, the number on the scale, or I managed to eat an entire box of spinach and no potato chips for dinner. Like, all of a sudden that is a very small existence to be basing your worth on. And I think anybody who's really being honest with themselves knows that, right? And knows that there's something in us that wants more than that.
Yeah. Do you feel like we're trying to get that need for, I like, what were the words that you used, adventure or bigness through keeping the diet perfect, but it's also like this safe little controlled container that we're doing it in? It's almost a substitute.
Yeah, I think that it's scary to want those things. And for me personally, and maybe for a lot of us, I think it feels safer to tell ourselves we can only have those things one day when we're meeting all of our own expectations of ourselves, right? So like when I weigh this amount, or when I am like executing this perfectly controlled, planned out day consistently every single day of my life, then I can wear the bikini on the beach. Then I can go do the adventure where I backpack across the country, whatever it is for you. But I think it feels safer to us to say, I don't deserve that yet. So I'm going to put these rules on my life. And then one day, if I meet my own expectations, then I'll go give myself the things that I want.
Yes, totally. 100%. Do you feel like that was just a sort of glimmer of awakening moment for you? Or was that a total like breaking things free and, oh my gosh, I've been crazy? Because my experience was, and what I see people go through is that we wake up a little bit to that, like everything you said, like, oh my gosh, I'm using this and holding everything that I really want back from myself until I reach some sort of state of perfection. And I definitely went in and out and in and out and in and out of it for a long time. Was that also your experience?
Oh, sure. Yeah, because I think perfectionism is addictive. It's, you get a high from meeting your own ridiculous expectations of yourself because you feel totally in control. And it's way better than the reality of like, we're all completely out of control and our lives are a mess. Like, that doesn't feel so great, or in the same way as the rush you get when you're like, yes, look at me. Like, I'm doing all the things, right? So it's totally addictive. And you have to like break yourself against that sort of dictatorship over and over again before you go like, no, this really, really isn't working. Like, it doesn't feel good. It feels good when I'm on top of it, but not when I'm underneath it.
I'm so glad you said that. And it's similar to something that, or the way that I describe it, I always say perfectionism or like the perfect diet or even a certain number on a scale is like a drug. Like, you get it for a minute, or maybe like one day you conquered that perfect diet, or you got that number, or, it was perfect to whatever your standard was at the moment. And it feels so good, but it's like, it's the illusion of what we really want. And like you said, it's totally addictive. And sometimes once you get it, you keep reaching for it.
Yeah.
But it's not truly what we want. So how did you get into the wellness world, let's say, to begin with? Did you have health issues that you were working with? Or was it just...
Yeah, I mean, I felt like crap for most of my life. I'm somebody who I look back even on being a young child and I just never remember feeling well. And so I think there's this misconception of people thinking like, oh, so-and-so is so obsessed with health and da-da-da-da. But most people are doing this stuff because their life is untenable without it, right? Like, I felt so miserable in my body for so long. I was suffering from chronic fatigue and depression, and it was cyclical, my bouts with this stuff. And so to everybody else in my life, I really looked like I was doing well, but in reality, I would have these seasons of just feeling so poorly. And so I got into the health stuff originally when I started realizing like, oh, what I eat can dramatically affect how I feel in my body. And that seems so simplistic now in hindsight, but at the time that was like, I was in my early 20s, and that was a revelation to me, was that I could affect how I was feeling by the choices I made around food and lifestyle.
And I don't think that's simplistic. I think that that's something, there are people that don't know that. For as much as we're immersed in the wellness world, well, let me see if I can tie all of this together. This is reminding me of a post that you wrote about basically like nobody wants to be a health freak. And I really, really, really appreciated that one too, because it was kind of also a humbling moment for me. You've had a real impact on my journey, like little shifts for me, because I had gone from the super rigid, dogmatic, obsessive, perfectionistic, detox and cleansing world to an intuitive eating route, which in certain circles just looks like eat whatever you want, whenever you want. And I was like, all those wellness people are crazy. All those detox people are crazy. Just eat whatever you want. And I think I was probably in the most extreme, like I hadn't found any real embodiment, like listening to my body in it, or finding the different layers of myself that were wanting to eat these different things, like nothing. I was just eating whatever I wanted. And as I read your post, it was just like, oh yeah, I have to admit, my body isn't feeling the way that I want it to feel, or like I used to feel. I'm just sort of riding another high, a sort of opposite swing in the other direction high of quote freedom, which isn't actually freedom. So I would just love to hear the details on your healing journey, like how growing up, you just never felt well. You had this discovery of, oh, food actually makes an impact. Oh, that's where I was going with that. A lot of people in the intuitive eating world don't have any idea. Their backlash from dieting is just calorie counting or macro counting or whatever. And they haven't maybe experienced a whole foods way of living, or a plant-based way of living, or whatever's going to serve their body. And so that could still be a revelation. So that was the revelation for you, all of that to say. Where did you take it from there? I'd like to hear just about getting into detox and cleansing and where that went wrong, but maybe if your health improved at all, to where you're at now and the mental, emotional, physical benefits that you've experienced as you've really explored and learned to listen to your own body.
Yeah. So it did start with the detox cleansing sort of world. And I came into it with, like I mentioned, a ton of physical symptoms like chronic fatigue and depression and adrenal fatigue. And the way that actually looked in my life is that I would be going along, doing pretty successfully in school, and then I would have like a week where I just couldn't get out of bed, and I would hide under my covers and watch TV or do whatever. But then I'd be back to doing the next high functioning thing, and no one ever really noticed because I was able to keep up appearances pretty well, even with what was going on with me. So that's kind of the way that I came into this whole thing. And yeah, that season of really cleansing, doing a lot of juice cleansing, and frankly, starving myself in some ways, of enough calories and enough abundance. But it was still really important because I did start putting together the pieces of like, okay, this is how it's possible to feel in my body, and really began to see some signs of healing. And yet at the same time, I was still doing things that in hindsight, I now know weren't right for me. I was doing extremely long extended juice fasts, which I know is something you've done as well. And while they have some benefits in terms of like what your body is able to do with cleansing during that season, it also, I think, takes a real toll on your system in terms of the strain and the stress of that on your adrenals and your endocrine system. So at the same time as I was doing this good stuff for my body, I was also severely taxing it. And I kind of got into the cycle you're describing of perfectionism, and then falling off the wagon and then trying it again, because I thought, this is how good it's possible to feel. I got to get back there. And what happened with me is that after the birth of my first daughter, I experienced a total health crisis, which I hadn't before, because I had always been able to kind of keep things going. And when I gave birth to my daughter, it was it was an empowering experience, but it was also really hard. And about 4 months later, I had to have surgery to repair some tearing from the birth. And the cumulative effect of all of that, the pregnancy, the delivery, the surgery afterwards, I just experienced a health crisis, like I said. So my depression got really, really severe, like it never had been before in my life. I mean, I was contemplating suicide every single night. I was like self-harming. It was really bad. My hair was falling out. I felt unable to like get out of bed in the mornings to change her diaper. I would just cry hysterically. And it was the darkest period of my life that I can remember. And so in the midst of all that, I started taking control of my health in a different way. I incorporated a lot more abundance into my life. And I know you and I have talked about that some, about like going from that mentality of like detox and cleansing to like abundant plant foods. And I just, out of desperation, started allowing myself to like eat as much as I needed and to really not worry about weight or appearance or anything like that. And I slowly started healing. I also incorporated a ton of supplements. I started working with Anthony William, who helped me a ton with my health at that point. And it just kind of was like a new season for me. And so the period of depression lasted, I really came through it fairly quickly. Like it lasted probably 3 or 4 months. And by just really nourishing myself, shifting the focus from detox to nourishment was a huge shift for me and allowed me to move into a new season.
Was there anything scary about that, about allowing yourself to actually eat what you needed, or were you just so much at the end of your rope that anything would do?
I mean, the scary part was always like the scariest thing, right? Like I'm going to get super fat and be unlovable and unworthy of an amazing life. And my husband's not going to find me attractive anymore. Right. Like, I don't know. To me, those are always the scariest things. And that's sad because that is not something that I want to spend my energy being scared of. But yeah, of course, that's a scary thing.
Well, I love the way you said it, though, because so many people, when they start to tiptoe into allowing themselves to eat what they're actually needing, it just stops at, but oh my God, I'm going to get fat. But you saw underneath it, you're like, oh my God, I'm going to get fat. And what that means to me is, what if my husband doesn't love me? And what if I'm not attractive? And what if I can't do this? And what if I can't do that? Like you really understood what that meant to you. It wasn't just weight gain is evil, the end.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's
because of that, you were able to be really, I don't know, extra compassionate with yourself as you let yourself go there.
Yeah. And giving birth helped a lot with that because it changes the way you see your body. All of a sudden, your body becomes this like miraculous vehicle of life. And I couldn't believe what my body did through the pregnancy and the birth. And so that helped me to offer myself compassion in a way that I hadn't before.
Mm-hmm.
And then, having a safe, secure relationship of like, yeah, that was a fear of mine that my marriage would be affected. My husband would find me unattractive. But in reality, he has never given me a single reason to think that. And so I just had to hold on to the truth of like that love is bigger than a number on a scale.
Mm.
And I really spent the next, let me get these numbers right, 3 years. And I didn't think about my weight or anything at all. I just ate. And I was uncomfortable in my body for most of that time, if I'm being honest here. Like, but I couldn't think about weight loss. I couldn't think about what size I wanted to be, what jeans I wanted to fit in. I just didn't allow myself to think about that at all. And it was a really important season for me. And then at the end of that time, I don't know if you've had this experience too, but this past year, I have been able to think about it a little bit more and just say gently to myself, like, do we really need that extra sweet potato? Like, I think you're full. And just to start to talk in some more like gentle discipline with myself that has allowed me to feel more comfortable in my body and more comfortable with my choices. But I think those 3 years were a really important period for me of like not going there even a little bit, even at all.
Yeah, no, I want to say I 100% agree, but it's not 100% because I haven't, or I shouldn't say agree, relate, because I've never had children and my experience was a little bit different, but definitely the, allowing yourself to eat and putting on weight and just sort of hanging out with it and letting the healing be bigger picture. That's a really, really scary thing. And I went through that maybe on a more micro scale than what you did. And yeah, for sure. Getting to that point where you're like, okay, I'm settled. This is fine. I can be in this body. Totally cool. Maybe not my favorite, but I'm good. I can still be kind to myself. I can still live my life totally like the way that I want to live it. And maybe I'm eating a little emotionally over here, or this is more than I need over there. And all of that, like it's also interconnected because you start doing that and you start feeling better too. And you start trusting yourself and your body and becoming more connected in those ways. Were there other things that you did? I think this is important on the body acceptance piece. I think people think that body acceptance means you have to super like your body and be able to look in the mirror and be like, oh my gosh, sexy mama. But maybe it's just like, you know what, it is what it is. What was it for you? Did you have any tools in the department of body acceptance, or were you just, focus on the big picture? How did that work for you?
Yeah, I know it's funny. There's girls out there on social media who, they're like beautiful and stick thin and and they write a lot about body acceptance, right? And it's always easy to be like, oh yeah, like I would love myself too if I saw that in the mirror. And it was always a little hard for me to swallow. My body acceptance has not looked like that. Mine has been like, yeah, this is not so great, but it's okay with me, and to offer myself compassion anyways. And I think where that comes from for me is just asking myself the hard questions like, are you a soul that deserves compassion no matter what you look like? Answer, yes. The answer is always yes. Like, are you somebody who deserves grace and deserves to be loved regardless of your appearance? Yes. Like, and then when you question, you start to question your thoughts. And so it's just mental reframing for me, is a lot of it is just challenging myself and offering myself the same level of compassion that I would offer to a friend, my sister, anyone in my life,
Absolutely. And I love that was just a inclusion. You didn't get rid of anything. Like I've heard people who will struggle with like, well, I can't stop wanting to lose weight, or I can't stop, wanting to feel beautiful. And I'm like, well, fine. Like, of course, I think the desire for beauty is inherent in the feminine. I think that we want to feel beautiful, and I love that. And maybe we want to play with our body or shift our body in a certain way. And you can love that too, like love that desire. And maybe it's not time for that right now. And maybe it needs to be more of a result of listening. If your body needs to shift, a result of listening to it, not forcing it into some sort of ideal.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
And as far as the depression goes, I know that that's a really big piece for you. Were there other ways that you were addressing it outside of the food and nourishment piece?
Yeah, there definitely were. So I found food and supplements to be extremely helpful, but I was also in counseling, and I was working really closely with a counselor, and I had a supportive community around me, which were really valuable pieces. I chose to heal without using medication. I think based on my journey and the world as I understand it, either option for people is a valid and brave choice, right? I know a lot of people choose to use pharmaceutical drugs to heal. I did not. And that was just because for my story and my journey, it didn't feel right for me. And I think I do think this, and I did see this in my journey. the medical perspective on depression at this point is very strongly that it's impossible to heal without medication. And I had multiple therapists affirm that to me, that you need medication in order to heal. That obviously wasn't my experience. And so I just wanted to put that out there for anyone who needs to hear that it was possible for me to heal without medication. And the only way that it's safe to do that is in the presence of community and working closely with somebody who's in your life who can speak truth to you. And so I had those things. I had that support, so I was willing to try and do it. And my husband was very supportive of it. But yeah, regardless, it's a long, scary road to walk out of depression in either case, with or without medication. And so I recommend having as much support as you possibly can.
Mm-hmm. Tell me about that piece for you, the community piece, because I'm thinking, I'm coming back again to this post that you wrote, Nobody Wants to Be a Health Freak. Did you find yourself sort of on the outside of things, or having to be kind of the weirdo showing up for dinner? Did you eventually surround yourself more with people who had similar viewpoints as far as natural wellness and community and healing and faith and all of this? How has community played a role in your journey?
I mean, I've never minded being a weirdo, and no offense to if any of my friends listen to this, but most of my closest friends have always been weirdos too. I actually wrote that post on behalf of a friend because she was just dealing with so much pushback in her life. And I got so angry for her because I feel like when people are going through health crises and they're trying to make these changes, oftentimes the people who are closest to them are the ones who give them the hardest time about it. And that just felt so unfair to me. And I found it so infuriating. I'm somebody who I'm kind of bossy and I just don't allow myself to be pushed around very much. So nobody really gives me a hard time about the choices I make. But I see it happen to other people all the time, and it drives me crazy. So I wrote this big ranting post, which turned into Nobody Wants to Be a Health Freak. And it was just on behalf of people who are being bullied by their families. Oh my gosh, I just can't get my mind around that. How someone's family could really give them a hard time for not having a hamburger when they're dealing with chronic health issues. Anyways.
Yeah, no, it blows my mind too. It's one thing too that I have a hard time offering guidance on, because my family was vegetarian growing up. We were all the health weirdos. We were all the ones going to the restaurant and taking off the meat and adding beans and this sort of thing. And so I hear this stuff and I'm like, really? People do that, your family, your own family. And like you said, I think when you're the weirdo, you don't mind being the weirdo. So I've never really minded being the weirdo, kind of wear that badge with a little bit of pride. It's just how things are.
Yep.
Is there anything else that you want to share there? Advice that you have given your friend, maybe some things that were in that post as far as how to pursue taking care of your health, whether you're suffering with something terribly chronic or you just want to feel a little bit better when the people around you maybe don't support you?
I mean, what I really want to say is screw them, but that's not actually the truth. The truth is that I feel like when people become truly empowered to do whatever it is that they need to do to take care of themselves, then you can just bless and release anybody who comes against you in that, right? And it's this is what I need to do for myself. And when you're convicted in that and you can let go of your insecurity around it, the bullies will fade away because they have, I feel like people who bully or even give a hard time, a lot of times it's good natured, right? You're really going to eat that, or Uncle Sam is joking about it, right? But I feel like they can sense insecurity and they will exploit it. But if you can just stand in peace and confidence in your own choices, I feel like a lot of that will just fade away.
Oh, it's so true. When you don't care, nobody else really cares either. They really, really cares what you eat. I mean, it might trigger something in them. It might make them a little bit uncomfortable, but they're not going to give you the hard time that they would when they detect your insecurity. And I think that this is true for the weight piece too. I hear so many people say like, well, I can't just accept my body. What will people think? Like, who do I think I am to just do that when, but really it is the other way around. When you're totally good, like whether you like it or not, you're accepting, you're like, this is who I am. People don't care. They just see a confident person or their friend or their family member.
And people will grab it. I mean, here's the thing. Ultimately, I think where we all want to get is to a place of absolute permission to do whatever it is that we need to take care of ourselves in any moment. And when we can hold on to that, the beautiful thing that happens is that we can offer that to the other people around us too, even if they don't know they need it, right? So all of a sudden when Uncle Sam goes through his own health crisis, then he's going to gravitate towards your peace and your acceptance, because wherever anyone else is in their journey, for instance, in our house, we're plant-based vegan, and we give everyone in our family permission to do whatever it is they need to do to take care of themselves. So when my meat-eating relatives show up, they're welcome to bring their meal over to our house if they don't want to eat what we're eating. And we don't care at all. Mm-hmm. Everyone in our home is invited to take care of themselves. And I feel like when we give ourselves that permission, we can give it to everybody else in our lives too.
I love that so much. And I love, love, love watching your Instagram stories and following your Instagram posts. Like, it's funny, once you're talking to somebody, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm such a stalker. But it is out on Instagram. Your kids, they're beautiful and amazing. And the way that you feed your family is so beautiful. How do you approach a plant-based vegan lifestyle with your little kids and your family without being rigid? Like, where is the, your firmness balanced with your, what's the word I want to use? Like fluidity and flexibility.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For me, that has come from knowing where I draw my line. So in my home, we don't have animal products. That's just a line for me. And everything else is pretty fluid. Like, I listen to my kids, especially my 4-year-old. She can really talk to me now about the choices she wants to make. And I listen to her. And I really deal with my kids as though they're adult humans worthy of respect. Mm-hmm. And I try and make sure that the products, the snacks that we have in our home are really clean and I'm comfortable with them. And then I approach food with this abundant, like, let's make stuff, let's eat, isn't this good mentality. And my kid, she loves food. She loves to eat. She sits at the table with us. She loves to talk about food. And she really adopted for herself the idea of non-harming animals from a young age. So even at 3, honestly, I was prepared to let her make her own choices around food. And there's a couple times we were out of the house and she would ask me to have something that wasn't vegan. And I would say to her, well, it's not vegan. Do you want to have it? And she would say, no. Mm-hmm. So she really took that on to be her own. With our other kids, if they at some point want to make the choice to not be vegan, I'm prepared to let them do that. I just feel like the right approach with kids and food is just freedom, 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 and joy. Like, if your relationship with food is joyful, I feel like your kids are going to pick up on that. So that's how I'm trying to approach it. And, for better or worse, we don't know if it's going to work, but so far, so good.
Oh, I love that. And I have a question about that. But I just realized how heartwarming it is for me to talk to somebody who is raising their kids vegan. Because I grew up not vegan, but vegetarian, and we ate a large percentage vegan. And it wasn't necessarily my mom. She was vegetarian and my dad wasn't. And there wasn't necessarily permission to eat animal products, but I never questioned it. Like she said, mm-hmm. She just told us, we don't eat our friends. And I was like, oh, yeah, of course not. And I remember once, because we grew up with veggie burgers and all of this sort of thing, my dad's friend was babysitting me and he took me to McDonald's, and I didn't really know that like if you order a burger, it wasn't just a veggie burger. And he didn't know that my mom was vegetarian and raising us vegetarian. So I ordered a burger and ate the burger, and turned out later it was, found out that it was a cow. And I came home and I was like on the verge of tears. I was a little girl, and my mom was like, "What's wrong?" And I start crying, and I thought I was going to be in trouble. And I told her, I was like, "I ate meat. Oh my God." And she was just like, "Oh, baby, it's okay." And it's such a tender moment that's coming back to me, to be raised without that judgment. But also, like, I'm so grateful that I was raised vegetarian, because even though I did eat meat for a while in my 20s, it was very easy for me to without even trying, come back to vegetarianism and veganism. And it's not a weird, unfamiliar world. So I just think your kids are really, really lucky.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's worth it. I think the hard thing that I've encountered lately is moms who are like, I want to give my kids freedom with food, but when he eats, wheat, he turns into a raging, crazy 7-year-old that I can't control. That's like literally throwing a tantrum and trying to hurt himself, So I feel like when you're dealing with kids and food, there are all these situations that arise that make it harder than the obvious of like, yeah, if you really want that, you can have it, which is like my approach with my kids who don't suffer from like chronic health stuff really. And so, yeah, anyways, I've just become aware that there's like situations that make it complicated. And to those moms, I just have really encouraged them to check into their intuition about it, and like that they have a divinely given intuition about their kids, and that they will know how to navigate those situations, but you can't go wrong with a lot of joy and a lot of grace, right? Like those two things I feel like kids respond to so deeply.
Right. And this goes back to what you were saying a moment ago, where you're like, you know what, I don't exactly know how this is going to turn out. We're doing our best with this. And it reminds me of one of your Instagram stories recently where you were talking about mom guilt. And this jumped out so beautifully to me. You were like, we don't have to be, this guilt thing isn't serving us. And whatever mistakes, let's put it in quote, mistakes you make is going to be part of your story and your kid's story. And it's what's going to help them build character.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a huge, that idea has become hugely important to me. And it's just that we are not here to give our children or our spouses or anyone in our life, we're not here to give them perfect stories or even to try and give them perfect stories. We're here to help them and stand with them in the stories that they're given. So when we make mistakes or when terrible, awful things happen to the people in our lives, as they will inevitably, no matter how perfect we are or we aren't, our role in that is to just stand with them. And in the case of our kids, like teach them how to have the courage to stand in the stories that they're given. And to me, that allows me to stand in a place of like, I refuse to be one of these like guilt-ridden moms who questions and regrets the choices that she makes. I will not do that. I won't do it to myself, and I won't do it to my kids either, because they don't need that. It doesn't serve them. What they need is for me to accept my incredible humanness and to show them what it looks like to have courage and grace for other people, and to just stand in our lives and let the adventure unfold before us. Right. And so that's what I want to show them and model to them. And when it comes to like choices that, I mean, I've already made choices in my kids' lives that I regret. Right. And I've already had terrible moments where it's like, oh man, that was just not me at my finest. But that's okay. It's part of their story. And it's not my job to like try and control that. I just have to help them live it. Right.
I love that, because what you're modeling for them is non-perfectionism, and the fact that they're allowed to make mistakes. And they're allowed to make mistakes, whether we want to put that in quotes or not, and then just be compassionate and forgive themselves and learn. I think it's something I was thinking about with the body acceptance piece. Like whether you like the way your body looks or not, acceptance is what's going to let you learn and grow and keep journeying. And, whether we appreciate our mistakes or not, accepting, we did what we did. It helps you learn and keep growing. And have a nicer time doing it. It's so hard to live your life beating yourself up and feeling guilty.
Yeah. I mean, one of my favorite parenting quotes that I've ever read is just that what our kids most need is our enjoyment of them. And I feel like that applies to us as adults too, right? Like what we most desperately need is our enjoyment of ourselves. And what our spouses most need is our enjoyment of them. Like everybody just has this desperate need to feel enjoyed by the people around them. And when I remember that, I'm at my best as a mother.
I love that. I've followed you and been connected with you and your writing for however many years that we have been, I don't even know. And you've always had this very beautiful balance between this free-spirited approach and very grounded in reality. Like it's not floaty, fluffy, the spiritual free spirit. It has roots. And I love that has grown through you getting married and you having children. Like it's matured and it's even more beautiful and rich. And I feel like you maybe have slid your answer in and around this conversation, but I always tie up conversations with what is your definition of a free spirit?
Wow. To me, a free spirit is a spirit that is, okay, so I guess I would say for me, that looks like moving always deeper into love. And that has been my journey into freedom, has been a journey deeper into love with a capital L. I think that love is available to all of us here, and that a life that goes deeper into freedom is moving closer and closer towards that. And when I trust the journey of my life that's unfolding before me, it does carry me further into that. And so I feel like I'm on this journey towards more and more freedom of spirit in that. And it is the privilege of my life to be able to feel that road stretching before me and to be able to see it when I look back.
Thank you so much for laying it out as a journey, because I do have concerns sometimes that people will listen to some of these conversations or listen to some of the things that I say and get the sense that I need to, a free spirit looks like this, or I need to become a free spirit, or I need to get rid of anything that's in the way of me not being fully myself. But we're always evolving that more, always evolving into more freedom and understanding things more clearly. And you get to become more and more of a free, more freedom in your spirit, or however you said it, as you go. Thank you. That was really lovely. Is there anything that you would like to share? We'll have your website and your Instagram and your recipes and all of that linked. I know you just put out a potato recipe book, which I got, and it's mind-blowing. Would you like to talk about that a little and share anything else that you want to?
Sure. I guess I can wrap all that up, including the potato book, by saying that this journey, this is kind of my theme for this year, is that this journey of my life has so not gone the way I expected it to go. But I am profoundly grateful for where it has led me all the same. And for people that are in the midst of hard healing or just not healing, just hard, terrible seasons, I just want to share that it doesn't stop there. And there will come a day where all of us will look backwards and realize how profoundly beautiful the story of our lives is. And I'm just so grateful to be here. I'm grateful that you wanted to have this conversation. Thanks. And I'm grateful for my little potatoes recipe book, because to me, it is this little symbol of like, you will be given wonderful creative things to do in your life. And I just feel like it is coming full circle for me of like having a new thing, being able to share this food that has given me so much life with other people. So that's really cool.
Can you just tell people more about this book? Like, this isn't just roasted potatoes. This is like potatoes turning into pasta.
Yeah. It's fun.
They're so creative and they're so delicious.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you want me to? Yeah.
Maybe I'd love to hear, what are a few of your favorite recipes and maybe what your process is in creating them?
Yeah, sure. I mean, for me, creating with food, it's like playing with my food. I just have so much fun doing it. And part of my finding the balance between freedom and discipline was like, okay, there's a limited, my diet that makes me feel my absolute best is actually pretty limited. It's like fruits and vegetables. And so bearing that in mind, I kind of took it as this challenge of like, okay, how delicious can we make that? And I found along the way that like, oh, this food can feel so abundant and so satisfying. And you can sit down to like a decadent meal that is literally just plants. And that was so fun for me. So I started sharing that journey on Instagram, and along came the potatoes book. And there's potato cakes in there. I love the potato pasta. There's a yellow curry. It's just this food that's meant to be like yum food, and at the same time, the ingredients are all incredibly clean. So
yeah, I love it. They're so simple and you feel like you're eating this super comforting, hearty, comfort food, but you don't feel heavy and like you just want to knock yourself out afterwards.
Yeah. Yep, totally.
Is sweet potatoes coming? Did I see you say sweet potatoes?
Yes, I'm working on part 2, which is sweet potatoes.
Awesome. Is there anything else that you have that you want to share with folks?
No, but thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. For more on food and body freedom, get my free ebook, The Eat to Feel Good Diet, by signing up for newsletter updates at freespirit-academy.com. I will be back with you next week.